Welcome back to the We Build Champions for Life channel. We doing another article review. This is a good one, folks. The USS Bonhomme Richard. Got a little bit of seals in it because the dude they claim started the fire was a buds of trite. There's all sorts of shady shit in this one. Judge finds sailor not guilty in fire that destroyed $1.2 billion Navy ships. The Bonhomme Richard was in the yards. That means they were going through some high-level maintenance, probably getting a bunch of stuff fixed that was broken. Anytime a ship is in the yard, the morale on the ship is just absolutely garbage. Nobody wants to be there. A lot of times they pull up this barge called a husbandry barge, and they live in dirty, scallowed conditions next to the ship on a barge. Or they got to come to work 12 and 12 because they fixing everything on the ship. It's just a really bad time. The ship itself is really dirty. My ship was in the yard when I first got there. Right before I checked on board, I went to see my ship. It was in the yard. Everybody was just really upset all the time, just low morale. I know the Navy's been working on some things to try to fix that, but it's just really hard because the sailors ain't doing what they doing. They ain't out at sea, so they get unhappy in port too long. It was always amazing to me, the fire risk comes from the old Navy when it was all wood. Shit would catch on fire then, you had problems. But this is a United States Navy warship pretty much made out of steel. So if you could get it to catch fire and it ain't around the fuel tanks or an aircraft or ammunition going off, you pretty much did a really good job. Because it's hard to get steel to burn. I'm going to tell you right now, I read the article already. There's a whole bunch of fishy stuff that just don't pass muster. And we'll talk about the Grade A Mark I motto, Admiral playbook to try to keep their job when something they did totally messed up. I'm going to put a lot of onus on the CO, put a lot of onus on the Commodore. If you ain't got a plan to put out a little ass fire on a ship in the yard, and you relying on the San Diego Fire Department, you probably got some major problems. Judge finds sailor not guilty of fire that destroyed $1.2 billion Navy ship. Even though a separate Navy review found that 34 people, including 5 admirals, contributed or directly led to the loss of the USS Bonhomme Richard, Ryan Mays is the only person to face court-martial. Of course he is, man. Let's throw it on the E3, who's a butter tried. It sounded great when this first came out. Oh, yeah, the Buzz kid was pissed off he was on the ship, so he lit it on fire. That don't even pass muster. Military judge found seaman recruit Ryan Mays not guilty on Friday of setting fire to the $1.2 billion Navy ship. Hey, Ryan, I know you out there drinking beers right now just on fire. Happy as shit that this is over. Mays, 21, has stood trial on charges of aggravated arson, willfully hazarding a vessel for the 4-day blaze that destroyed the USS Bonhomme Richard, an amphibious assault ship, in 2020. The acquittal marks the end of a 2-year ordeal for Mays, who spent 55 days in the brig after he was arrested. I can't get everything I've lost back, but today is the start of a new life. I'm grateful that the military judge saw me for who I am, an innocent man who wanted to serve his country. This fire was traumatic for me and a lot of other sailors. This court-martial is an added layer of trauma. Yeah, I know he's getting coached. I know he's going to try to come at the Navy, but here's the facts. It's hard to sue the Navy, man, even if they try to do you dirty. Good on you, bro, for sticking it. They try to pin it on you. It sucked. On July 12, 2020, the Bonhomme Richard was moored at San Diego Naval Base undergoing a major overhaul, so it was in the yards like I was telling you. That morning, an area of the ship known as the Lower V caught fire, and the blaze quickly spread throughout the vessel. The warship was lost and had to be decommissioned. Anytime the ship is in the yard, they have this thing called Fire Watch. Fire Watch is a set of guys that walk around the ship monitoring it for fire. If they had so much flammable stuff in one location, I'm going to venture to say that the CO was a massive dereliction of duty for not having a fire watch posted on all that flammable stuff. Anytime there's a fire watch, you're welding on one side of the bulkhead and the other side of the bulkhead could get hot and cause something to catch on fire. You got a fire watch standing there. The fire watch's sole purpose is to make sure if stuff catches on fire, you catch it at the lowest level and you put it out. That's my first major glaring thing, is that someone was able to light a fire and it spread so quickly they couldn't put it out. A ProPublica investigation into Mays' case found there was little to connect him to the fire. There was no physical evidence that Mays or anyone else purposely set the fire. The Navy had one witness who placed Mays at the scene shortly before the fire, but whose story changed over time. Let me tell you how this works when the higher-ups are trying to frame somebody. They just find any little inkling and they get somebody and say, hey man, look, we'll take care of you. I need you to say all this. And a lot of times, over time, that dude can't remember the lies he told, so then everything changes. The witness saw him, but then the witness didn't see him. Then a bunch of other people saw him. Here's the facts, man. They didn't have a fire watch. The ability to let somebody sink a United States Navy warship that's made to have massive fires impacted on it by the enemy got set on fire by a 99-cent big lighter. Come on, man. That don't even make no sense. The criminal investigation into Mays also stood at odds with another Navy inquiry into the fire, which found that 34 people, including 5 admirals, either directly led to the loss of the ship or contributed to it. That investigation uncovered a litany of failures that put the ship at risk for catastrophic fire, including poor training. If shit goes wrong, 99% of the time it's poor training. Insufficient oversight and dangerous storage of hazardous materials. If you have a bunch of hazardous materials stored on a ship and it's not in the flammable locker where all that stuff's supposed to be, you better have a fire watch on it. I don't know about y'all, but I do know that oily rags in a trash can spontaneously combust and catch on fire. Thus the reason for a fire watch. Additionally, 87% of the ship's fire stations were out of order. If I was the CEO of this ship, I would have a fire watch and a working fire hose right there with all that flammable stuff. And because you had a lot of oily materials, I'll probably have some aqueous foam stuff so that I can hose it down with the fire retardant foam real quickly so it doesn't burn up the whole ship. The Navy continued to pursue Mays after a military judge recommended this year that the case be dropped for lack of evidence after a probable cause hearing. Of course they did. Them admirals ain't trying to give up them stars because they allowed somebody to not have a fire watch. Think about that. An E3 could have been watching that pile of combustible stuff and stopped a $1.2 billion destruction of a Navy ship. In closing remarks, Mays-led defense attorney Lieutenant Commander Jordi Torres said the investigation was a live fire exercise in the dangers of confirmation bias. Absolutely. It's called a witch hunt. We in Salem, back in the 1600s, we hunt for witches. He said investigators and then the prosecution discounted any evidence that didn't fit into the narrative of the Mays arsonist. Of course they did, man. This is a goat rope. They trying to frame people. That's what you do. You try to downplay everything that tells you it wasn't him, and then you try to upplay everything that looks like it was him. And in the end, we got lucky because Mays didn't get convicted. The lead prosecutor in the case, Captain Jason Jones, told the judge, "You're allowed to use interferences and circumstantial evidence, Captain Jones. They made you look like an idiot putting this in here. That's not how our judicial system works in America. You have to provide actual real evidence so that you can actually convict somebody. Preponderance is 9/10 of the law. Preponderance of the evidence." I'm not a lawyer. I did sleep in a Holiday Inn last night. In making a determination of arson, they can't even tell you how the fire started. Jones said criminal cases like this are puzzles, and even when there's missing pieces, the picture is clear. Jones also addressed some of the findings of the other Navy investigations in his closing remarks, saying the prosecution didn't dispute that the ship was lost to firefighting failures. Wait a minute. Firefighting failures. The ship was not lost because somebody set some stuff on fire. It was lost because there wasn't a hose there with some AFFF to put the fire out. Because fires do get started on Navy ships. I was on a Navy ship, the USS Merrimack, and we had a couple fires on there. Electrical fires, winch fires. But you know what? The ship didn't catch on fire and burn up because we had a fire watch. And we had all of our stations working. And we were well trained. But he said the fire started as a sucker punch from behind. Hey, bro, I don't know about you, Mr. Jones, but there ain't a whole lot of times shit like this is telegraphed. Today at 1 o'clock, somebody's going to set a fire in the V area on the ship. I want everybody to be prepared. It's just, I don't want to be sucker punched from behind. Mr. Jones, you sound like a fucking idiot, bro. Sucker punch from behind that the Navy could not have prevented. No, absolutely the Navy could have prevented it. It's called a fucking Mark I motto fire watch, bruh. In the 9-day court-martial, the Navy alleged that Mays was disgruntled sailor who had gone down to the lower V with a bucket of flammable liquid, set the fire, then snuck out a hatch, changed his clothes, slipped back among the sailors on duty. This motherfucker is James Bond. They're trying to tell me that Seaman Mays was James Bond. Does that even sound like something that would really happen in the 9-day court-martial? They saying he was disgruntled. Of course he was disgruntled. He failed out of buds. Where did he get this bucket of flammable liquid? Was he just walking around with a bucket of flammable liquid? Because it said he snuck down there with it, and he had to go down a hatch. So you tell me where he got this bucket of flammable liquid. Or was there a whole bunch of flammable liquid already down there to catch fire? Remember what I said. It's really hard to get metal to catch on fire. I don't know about you, but it's probably at the top 10 list of things that don't really like to burn. Clearly, there was tons of flammable materials and liquids right there in the general vicinity where the fire started. The fact that he changed his clothes. Let's just look at this a little bit. Maybe he had on some overalls. He just took off the overalls, went back to work. But here's what I'm going to tell you on the ship, man. Everybody know everything. It's too close. So if he disappeared and came back, like they'd be, oh yeah, he was gone, man. He was gone for a while. They would know that. Mays was 19 at the time of the fires, assigned to menial jobs such as mopping and painting. My man was chipping paint. Exactly what you hear 1,000 fucking times. You fail out of buds, you go to a ship, you do menial jobs. Mopping and paint. That's part of the Navy. That's what E1, E2s, E3s in the Navy do. They clean a lot. Not a big deal. Not the end of the world. We're still getting his 3 squares a day, getting his sleep. But he running a mop and a paintbrush. And really, he probably running a chipping gun. All right? He had previously dropped out of SEAL training and told fellow sailors at the Naval Special Warfare Command where he thought he belonged. Everybody thinks they want to be a SEAL. Absolutely. Being on a ship he disliked, the prosecution said was his motive. You ain't got to drop out of buds to be disgruntled on a United States Navy ship. You don't need a prerequisite to be drop out of buds. Navy ships are dirty. Berthing stinks. You lose a lot of your individuality on a ship. And then you got them deployments. You gone from land a lot. There's 1,000 reasons to be disgruntled on a ship, but you ain't got to drop out of buds to be the head disgruntled dude. I guarantee you, he was on that ship. That ship got a staff, probably 1,500. I guarantee you there was at least 100 people more disgruntled than Seaman Mays on that ship. Investigators found a blue Bic lighter in Mays' possession and have pointed to it as the possible way the fire started. Torres was dismissive, saying apparently just having a lighter makes you an arsonist. If anybody's been in the Navy, I'm going to say at least 50% of the Navy smokes cigarettes. So you telling me that we're going to pin our whole investigation of a $1.2 billion Navy ship on a 99-cent Bic lighter from Walmart? Folks, if you can't smell a rat, if you can't smell a witch hunt in this one, man, they got this laid out like, come on, man, you ain't even serious on me. We probably spent $3 million on all the stuff to go to this prosecution over a 99-cent Bic lighter that he had in his pocket. Did anyone ask if he smoked? Because did they find a pack of cigarettes with that Bic lighter? They did. They found a pack of cigarettes with the Bic lighter. The trial largely centered on 2 competing witnesses' arguments over whether the crime had even been committed. They don't even know if the shit really caught fire, if someone lit it on fire. All they know is that a fire started. The fire investigator with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives ruled the blazing arson that was started by someone putting an open flame on a large cardboard boxes. But defense experts disputed that conclusion, saying that there were 2 other possible causes. ATF investigators missed that undetermined was the only reasonable conclusion. Defense experts testified that lithium batteries and an arc from an engine wire on a forklift could not be ruled out as causes of the fire. How about just some oily ass rags caught on fire? That's some common sense. But all this stuff, like someone started it, the bottom line is there was no fire watch. Theo should have hung from the gallows. All them other cats, the admirals, all them other people that allowed that BS to go on. Whoever came up with the plan to have the San Diego Fire Department be the #1 primary firefighting mechanism on a U.S. Navy ship, on a U.S. Navy station, Should have hung from the gallows, bro. 1.2 million, that's a gallows offense. Phil Fouts, fire investigator who testified on behalf of the defense, said he could not, with any scientific uncertainty, say whether the batteries, the forklift, or arson was more likely the cause of the fire. They don't know what started the fire, let's be honest. They just all trying to find a way to get out of this. They need a sacrificial lamb. They picked maize. That don't even make no sense. An ATF electrical engineer testified that he did not take any pictures or notes about the batteries during his examination of the scene, even though the batteries were found in the area that the agency identified as the origin of the fire. The batteries were then stored in a Home Depot bucket by the ATF investigators. The engineer also did not photograph the forklift. The engineer testified that upon further investigation and testing both the batteries and the wire, he did not think any caused the fire. Lithium-ion batteries, let's just be honest. They've been blowing up in airplanes for a while. I'm not here to say none of that sounds feasible to me. I think the shit just spontaneously combusted, or someone actually got it started. Trying to rebut the defense experts finding the ATF engineer showed a judge a presentation using a forklift photo to highlight why he thought it couldn't have caused the fire. But the forklift was the wrong forklift. There were two in the lower V. The defense experts had found evidence the arcing on the other forklift. Stupid ass. First of all, who was driving the forklift? We talking about a forklift caused the fire. Don't you think the motherfucker driving the forklift would have saw the fire start? Clearly there was nobody driving forklifts down there when the fire got started. They grasping for everything they can at this point. But common sense tells me there would have been somebody driving a forklift and he would have saw the smoke. He would have saw a little bit of the smoke because he was driving a forklift down there. That means he was working down there. He wasn't just driving by in the forklift. Hey, I'm going to go down to the bridge. I'm going to go up to the bridge. I'm going to go to the flight deck. I'm going to drive the forklift. The damn shipping damn yards. You ain't doing nothing. If he was driving a forklift, that means he was working down there. If he was working down there, who did he see start the fire? See, this is that common sense shit that these idiots don't think that normal people have. Oh, man. Jones said, this is our rocket science prosecuting attorney, Mr. Idiot himself. Jones said that arson cases are often based on circumstantial evidence. The government had done its due diligence in re-examining the possible causes brought up by the defense. Okay? Stupid. Prosecution's key witness, Petty Officer Second Class Vasco, testified that while he was standing watch the morning of the fire, he saw maize go into the lower V shortly before he spotted smoke. Vesco at first told Naval Criminal Investigating Services agents he couldn't identify the person he saw. But then over several interviews, hey, it was Seaman Mays. Hey, KJ, it was Seaman Mays. Come on, man. They changed the story, man. Vasquez said the person he saw was wearing coveralls, but several witnesses testified they saw Mays in a different uniform that morning. Coveralls go on pretty easy. They come off, so that's just whatever. None of that shit is relevant, other than they have one random-ass witness that don't really know what he saw, okay? In an unusual twist, the prosecution did not call the lead NCIS agent to the stand. However, the defense lawyers did. They called Maya Kamat to testify. The defense mainly questioned her about an alternative suspect she investigated for several months. Another witness told NCIS she had spotted the seaman recruit Elijah McGovern sprinting from the lower V around the time that she saw smoke. Everybody's seeing smoke, but we ain't got nobody with a fire hose putting out the smoke. But I can tell you this, where there's smoke, there's fire, okay? Someone actually saw somebody they could identify sprinting from the lower V. He wasn't a Navy SEAL dropout, so he don't carry as much weight as a possible suspect. Now I see why the judge recommended they didn't prosecute this dumbass shit. They didn't have nothing. Okay. Mia Polian, who is now out of the Navy, testified she saw McGovern jump over a cone that had blocked off the lower V. It's weird to be running on a ship, she said. So she kept looking at him the entire time he was viewed. Okay, wait a minute now. That's somebody else, I believe, right? Another witness. Okay, that's the witness that saw him running. Okay. So she clearly knew who he was, saw him. That's some odd. That might be a dude we want to question. The prosecution claimed the video evidence shows Pullian could not have seen McGovern that day because there was too much contractor equipment, such as scaffolding and dumpsters in the way. Look, I'm just going to say this. They probably set up some garbage and tried to figure out how she saw him. But they didn't want her to have her. They didn't want a real witness that saw somebody. They wanted to make sure they could bring the Navy SEALs into this so they could get as much bang for their buck as they could out of saying, oh, this disgruntled Navy SEAL, try to deflect, you know what I'm saying, deflect and make counter accusations. When interviewed by the NCIS agents, McGovern denied setting the fire. McGovern had been searching online for fire characteristics the morning of the blaze. Had a drawing on his phone depicting steps to set a coffee shop on fire. McGovern had told agents that the searches were researches for a book he was writing about dragons, and that the novel began with a ship fire. Come on, bruh. What are we talking about here? Mr. Jones, what's that thing in the idiot of the day? What's that guy in DC they always talk about? The bozo of the day or whatever. Mr. Jones, you getting that award for the whole year, bruh. You got a dude talking about writing books about dragons and shit, and you not listening to this guy as a possible suspect. And there's an eyewitness said, come on, man. But here's the deal. Did they put him on the polygraph? That's my question. Did they interrogate him or did they just ask him some questions? They probably didn't want to do that because they was trying to bring the Navy SEALs and everybody else into this so they could deflect and possibly keep their stars. Stupid. Just think about that, man. This man Googling for all this stuff. It's 2022. If you're doing something online and you think you're getting away with it, hey, man, listen. Government recording everything on the intranet now. Everything. They recording every phone call, every conversation. They know who did it. They didn't have enough evidence to prove that Mr. McGovern did it. I'm not saying he did it. I myself tend to believe that it's the captain's fault. The CEO of the ship failed the United States Navy in this instance. Captain had testified she stopped investigating McGovern because he left the Navy. Wait a minute. You want to hear some dumbass shit? This right here is at the top of the list. Stopped investigating McGovern because he left the Navy. And the NCIS no longer had jurisdiction. Several months later, the Navy charged Mays with the crime. Come on, man. Are we serious here? We had to stop investigating somebody for a $1.2 billion ship because he got out the Navy? Okay, I'm just going to give you a little secret. Just a little secret. All the Navy had to do was put a stop loss on his ass and he couldn't have got out the Navy. Okay? But they wanted this to happen. See? They moving chess pieces around the board, but what they don't understand is only an idiot can't see the moves they're making. All right? Because you telling me he left the Navy. They let him leave the Navy on that one, okay? Stupid, man. In response to prodding by the prosecutors during cross-examination, Calvin agreed that she had stopped investigating McGovern because she had exhausted all leads. Okay, great. They don't sound like they really try to catch nobody. In closing arguments, Jones disputed McGovern's as a sci-fi loving sailor who had been seen leaving the ship and had promptly cleared as a suspect. Of course you did, Mr. Jones. You the damn idiot of the day. So, of course you thought that he was a sci-fi loving sailor and just negated all the good information. Okay? All right, here we go. The Navy captain, Derek Butler, the military judge, have refused to release nearly all records in Mays' case, citing an Article 140A Uniform Code of Military Justice, as well as a memo issued by the former Defense Department General Counsel and the Navy interpretations of that guidance. Pro facto has filed a complaint and a motion for a temporary restraining order, preliminary injunction to prevent the Navy from continuing to withhold court records in Mays' case, contending that the military and the judge are in violation of the First Amendment, common laws, access to court proceedings and records. During the court-martial, exhibits also weren't always visible, including photographs of key evidence, stipulations of facts, sometimes correct testimony weren't publicly available. There was never any evidence to support a conviction, and that's about the only thing that makes sense in this court-martial because Seaman Mays is innocent. Torres told Pro Forma on behalf of the defense team, thankfully the military judge based his verdict on the evidence and not merely the argument and suspicion that the Navy won today because an innocent sailor avoided a wrongful conviction. Here's my question. When are we going to court-martial the real guilty people? Like the CO, the XO, the training officer, the damn person in charge of the yard, the space CO. I want to convict some real people. Some officers with rank. They should have had a fire watch on that flammable material. They should have had a legitimate fire plan. I guarantee you, if someone can send me the report of everything that went wrong in this case, The actual dollar with the actual guy with the 99-cent big lighter was so far away removed from the actual fire that none of it would have mattered. If they had done half of the stuff, they probably would have put the fire out in 10 minutes, maybe even 3 minutes, okay? But they didn't. So here we are trying to convict Seaman Mays, the 19-year-old who's now 21, of court-martial and burning down a $1.2 million ship. Look, I hope this article review gave you a little insight in the Navy, how much bullshit you go through sometimes when the political hands be. Hey, look, man, y'all want to see some more of these article reviews, make sure you send them in the comments. I know I got one more to do already. As always, smash the subscribe button, hit the like button, share it with your friends. As always, we building champions for life.